Julius Caesar had been warned. The seer Spurinna had predicted that the dictator's life would be in great peril on the Ides of March. When on that day Caesar was on his way to the Senate House, he greeted the seer with a jest and said, "Well, the Ides of March are come." And the seer said to him softly, "Aye, they are come, but they are not gone." As he took his seat in the Senate House, the conspirators gathered about him as if to pay their respects, and Cimber caught his toga by both shoulders. Then as Caesar cried, "Why, this is violence!" Casca stabbed him just below the throat. When he saw that he was beset on every side by drawn daggers, he muffled his head in his robe, with the lower part of his body also covered, and in this wise he was stabbed with 23 wounds, uttering not a word, but merely a groan at the first stroke, though some have written that when Marcus Brutus rushed at him, he said in Greek, "You too, my child." And so perished Julius Caesar, Roman dictator perpetuus.
The Battle of Teutoburg Forest in 9 AD was a disaster for the Roman Empire. 3 entire legions wiped out almost to a man, the head of their commander, Quintilius Varus, used as an enticement to further rebellion and quickly followed by the ejection of the Romans from Germania. The defeat had a profound effect on the Emperor Augustus himself. They say that he was so greatly affected that for several months he cut neither his beard nor his hair, and sometimes would dash his head against a door, crying, "Quintilius Varus, give me back my legions." And he observed the day of the disaster each year as one of sorrow and mourning. At 72 years old, was this an old man losing his grip on reality, or a man so used to getting his way that it was a significant shock when things did not proceed according to his design?
By 31 AD, so detached was the Emperor Tiberius from imperial rule in Capri that it was thought that his praetorian prefect Sejanus planned to take it from him. This plot was revealed to him by his sister-in-law, Antonia Minor, and to prevent open rebellion, Tiberius spread the rumour that he intended to give Sejanus imperial power. Tiberius's ally, Macro, then took command of the praetorians and delivered a letter from the emperor to the Senate. The letter contained no wholesale denunciation of Sejanus, but some other matter, then a slight censure of his conduct, then something else, and after that some further objection to him. And at the close it said that he must be kept under guard. Sejanus let the time slip by, and remained in his seat, for he had already been humbled. When finally the reading of the letter was finished, all with one voice denounced and threatened him. Sejanus was executed, and his body cast down the stairway, where the rabble abused it for 3 whole days, and afterwards threw it into the river.
For some, he was certainly dangerous to know. But was Caligula mad or just bad? There have been numerous suggestions over what illness might have led to Caligula's behaviour. Encephalitis, epilepsy, meningitis, hypothyroidism, and sources such as Suetonius do record him as being sickly looking. Despite his seemingly poor base health, his reign may have begun rather well. But in the 8th month, a severe disease attacked Gaius, who had changed the manner of his living. For he began to indulge in strong wine and rich dishes, in insatiable desires and great insolence, in the unseasonable use of hot baths and emetics, in wine-bibbing and drunkenness and returning gluttony, in lust after boys and women, and in everything else which tends to destroy both soul and body. After surviving this illness, it was not long before Gaius changed into ferocity of disposition, and displayed savageness which he had previously overshadowed by pretense and hypocrisy.
On 24th of January 41 AD, the Emperor Caligula was murdered by the Praetorian Guard. The palace was then thrown into chaos, with the assassins looking to finish off the imperial family and the dead emperor's Germanic bodyguard giving violent vent to their outrage by attacking anyone and everyone. In great terror at the news of the murder, Claudius stole away to a balcony and hid among the curtains which hung before the door. As he cowered there, a common soldier who was prowling about at random saw his feet, intending to ask who he was, pulled him out and recognised him, and when Claudius fell at his feet in terror, he hailed him as emperor. Claudius was then spirited away to the Praetorian camp, where he was protected from the machinations of the assassins and the Senate until the latter was forced to acquiesce to his Praetorian-led accession as emperor. How much of this sudden elevation to power from behind the curtain was on the approval or even the connivance of Claudius himself is open to question.
Almost from the moment of his accession to the throne in 54 AD, there was tension between the Emperor Nero and his mother Agrippina. Her influence over his reign, supposed machinations to expand that influence, and criticism of his behaviour led to further deterioration in the mother-son relationship, and her eventual removal from participation in state affairs. At last, terrified by her violence and threats, Nero determined to have her life, and after thrice attempting it by poison, and finding that she had made herself immune by antidotes, he tampered with the ceiling of her bedroom, contriving a mechanical device for loosening its panels and dropping them upon her while she slept. When this leaked out through some of those connected with the plot, he devised a collapsible boat to destroy her by shipwreck, or by the falling in of its cabin. Suetonius, Nero 34. Unsurprisingly, such a cartoonist assassination attempt failed, with Agrippina swimming away to safety. Instead, Nero went a more conventional route, employing assassins to stab his mother to death and claiming that she had committed suicide after being found to be plotting against the emperor.
Faced with revolts in the German provinces and growing discontent amongst his supposedly loyal forces in Rome, the Emperor Galba tried to secure his rule by announcing his succession plan. However, in passing over Otho, Galba sealed his fate. A conspiracy arose amongst the Praetorians in support of Otho, and Galba was murdered on the 15th of January, 69. He had lived 73 years, and he was happier under the rule of others than in his own. Galba himself was of mediocre genius, being rather free from faults than possessing virtues. He was neither careless of reputation, nor one who cared to boast of it. He seemed too great to be a subject, so long as he was subject, and all would have agreed that he was equal to the imperial office if he had never held it. After his death, Galba's head was stuck on a pole, but after days of neglect and abuse, it was buried along with his body in Galba's private gardens on the Aurelian Way. Upon ascending the throne, Otho found that gaining power was a lot easier than keeping it. The rebel German legions that had precipitated Galba's murder had acclaimed their commander Vitellius as emperor. Failing to prevent the Vitellian entry into Italy, Otho rashly accepted battle before his Balkan reinforcements could arrive, and his advanced force was defeated at Bedriacum on 14th of April 69. Otho still had a formidable army to be bolstered by the approaching Dalmatian legions. However, rather than continue the damaging civil war, Otho took Bedriacum as a sign that the gods favored Vitellius. Despite entreaties from his soldiers, and against his dishonorable reputation as a companion of Nero, Otho committed suicide after encouraging his men to accept Vitellius as emperor. Although the goddess of civil warfare was still in doubt, and soft Otho had perhaps still a chance of winning, he renounced fighting that would have cost much blood, and with sure hand pierced right through his breast. By all means, let Cato in his life be greater than Caesar himself. In his death, was he greater than Otho? Vitellius might be more well known for his brief victory in the civil wars that racked the Roman Empire in the year AD 69, or even for his abdication and lynching in the streets of Rome following the defeat of his forces at the Second Battle of Bedriacum, but perhaps his reputation has become more tied up with one of his vices, gluttony. He always made 3 meals a day, sometimes 4, breakfast, dinner, and supper, and a drunken revel after all. This load of victuals he could well enough bear from a custom of frequently vomiting. The most famous was a set entertainment given him by his brother, at which, it is said, there were served up no less than 2,000 choice fishes and 7,000 birds. At another feast, in a dish, there were tossed up together the livers of charfish, the brains of pheasants and peacocks, with the tongues of flamingos and the entrails of lampreys. He was not only a man of an insatiable appetite, but would gratify it likewise at unseasonable times, and with any garbage that came in his way.
His new realm having been ravaged by the civil wars of AD 69, the Emperor Vespasian sought to restore its financial security by a series of new and renewed taxes. This gained him something of a reputation of extracting as much money as he could, even from what were considered disreputable sources. When his son Titus blamed him for even laying a tax upon urine, he applied to his nose a piece of the money he received in the first instalment and asked him if it stunk. And he replying no, and yet, he said, it is derived from urine. This exchange is thought to have originated the Latin proverb pecunia non olet, money does not smell, used today to highlight that the value of money is not affected by its origins. While he may not have invented such a tax, a vitigial urinae had been enacted under Nero, Vespasian came to be associated with it, with public urinals in modern France and Italy still named after him.
A decade before he became emperor, Titus served under his father Vespasian during the Jewish revolt. When Vespasian made his bid for the throne, Titus took command of the siege of Jerusalem, which began in April AD 70. 5 months of blockade, siege operations, infighting, and growing deprivation followed, until the Romans, when the defenders were exhausted, rushed in. The Jews resisted most vigorously in front of the temple, so that the number of those slain is reported to be 11,000, but 100,000 taken and sold. Titus deliberated whether he should overthrow the temple, for it seemed to some that the sacred temple, beyond all mortal things, ought not to be destroyed, as the ruins afforded a perpetual mark of cruelty. But on the other hand, Titus himself and others were of the opinion that the temple should first of all be overthrown, in order that the religion of the Jews might be more fully destroyed. Titus's triumph is commemorated on the Arch of Titus in Rome, depicting some of the many treasures looted from Jerusalem, including the menorah and the trumpets of Jericho.
Autocratic and arrogant rule, property confiscations, executions, and poor relations with the aristocracy spawned a plot against the Emperor Domitian, encompassing friends, freedmen, officials, courtiers, and possibly his wife. As the conspirators were deliberating when and how to attack him, Stephanus, a steward of the emperor's niece, at the time under accusation for embezzlement, offered his aid and counsel. To avoid suspicion, he wrapped up his left arm in woolen bandages for some days, pretending that he had injured it, and concealed in them a dagger. Then, pretending to betray a conspiracy, and for that reason being given an audience, he stabbed the emperor in the groin as he was reading a paper which the assassin handed him. As the wounded prince attempted to resist, he was slain with 7 wounds, from a subaltern, a freedman, a decurion, and a gladiator. On the 18th of September AD 96, at the age of 44, Domitian was dead, his body cremated, and his ashes secretly deposited in the Flavian temple.